Good morning. This is Don V with Truth Be Told, and we have a couple interesting reports here we'd like to bring before you. Please remember to subscribe. It really helps out my numbers. It's completely free, and it helps me out a lot. But before I move to the report, I have an exclusive video on Rumble that I just uploaded that you really must watch about Slow Joe and what he's up to and what they're doing. All is not what appears. I'll put the link. It'll be the last link on the bottom of my description, so be sure to scroll down to it and click on it. And when you get over to Rumble, subscribe. Appreciate it. All right, so without ado, let's move to the first one. Okay. It says, Brandon Smith, why are globalists in government so desperate for 100%, rates? So I don't think I'm the only person that has noticed that there has been a sudden deluge of the COVID Jabberdoodles propaganda and the Jabberdoodle passport propaganda in the past month. More so than I think we have seen since the beginning of the year. I'm speaking of us in particular, but it is important to point out that in the U.S., the establishment is still desperately clamoring for a much higher Jabberdoodle rate. In places like Europe, the UK, and Australia, Jabberdoodle rates are higher, and governments have moved on to the Jabberdoodle passport phase of their agenda. Some people may be confused by the obvious lockstep. The most nations are moving in as far as the COVID mandates and restrictions are concerned. How is it possible that almost all the governments on the planet are in agreement on medical total I can't seem to get the word out. At any rate, well, it's rather easy to understand when you realize the majority of them are linked together through the globalist institutions like the World Economic Forum, which has repeatedly called the pandemic a perfect opportunity to push their plans for the Great Reset. The Great Reset is a long-term ideological usurpation of what's left of individual freedom and free market economies, and its goal is the imposition of global socialist communist dictatorship. Globalists wrap these objectives in pretty sounding words and humanitarian sounding aspirations, but at bottom, the reset is about an end to liberty as we know it. This is not an exaggeration, this is reality, and this is what these people desire above all else. But how to achieve such a goal? Well, interestingly enough, the WEF and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation described exactly how they plan to do it during a simulation they held in October of 2019 called Event 201. During the event, they imagined a massive coronavirus pandemic. Imagine that. Spread supposedly from animals to humans, which would facilitate the need for pervasive restrictions on individual liberties, national economies, as well as the internet and social media. I'm sure it's all a coincidence, but the exact same scenario the globalists at the WEF played out during Event 201 happened in the real world only 2 months later. Imagine that. In any case, the pandemic itself has been boon for the globalists. We have not seen a far-reaching government power and corporate power grab since the rise of the National Socialists in Europe and the spread of communism in Russia and China almost a century ago. In fact, I would say that what humanity as a whole is facing today is much worse than what those wretched empires ever could have produced. There's no doubt globalist institutions and their government partners are greatest beneficiaries of the COVID crisis. They stand to gain ultimate social and political power if their agenda to exploit the pandemic succeeds. That said, there's a few hang-ups in their plan, and this is why I believe we are seeing an aggressive propaganda push in recent weeks. For example, as I outlined with extensive evidence in my article, Biden's Jabberdoodle Strike Force Plan stinks of desperation. It appears that the Jabberdoodle rate, especially in the U.S., is now nowhere near as high as the elites would like. Oh, boo-hoo. While the Slow Joe administration and the CDC claim an overall Jabberdoodle rate of 67%. Numerous other stats include the Mayo Clinic's state map numbers indicate that only 4 states in the U.S. actually have a Jabberdoodle rate of over 65% for 1 dose or more, and the majority of states have rates around 50% or less. Even large population blue states like California and New York are not above the 65% mark. And frankly, those numbers are going nowhere as the Jabberdoodles are dropping off a cliff. If someone has not submitted by now with 0 wait times and ample doses everywhere, then they are unlikely to ever be Jabberdoodled. Contradictory stats suggest to me that Slow Joe and the CDC are inflating their Jabberdoodle numbers to create the illusion that a larger majority of Americans support the Jabberdoodle. And this is the case. It explains why Biden, Fauci, and the mainstream media are force-feeding the public with pro-Jabberdoodle hype that consistently contradicts the real science. They are not getting the fear and public compliance that they had hoped for. That's because America's waking up. But why do they want 100% Jabberdoodles? Why are they so desperate for every single person in the world to get the mRNA jab? After all, the average IFR death rate of COVID is a mere 0.26% of those infected. This is a stat that the media consistently and deliberately refuses to mention to the public. This means that 99.7% of the public is in no danger from the pandemic, whether they are Jabberdoodled or not. Do the Jabberdoodles ensure better odds? Well, according to recent statistics from Massachusetts, not necessarily, as they report over 5,100 infections and 80 deaths of fully Jabberdoodle patients. The media keeps telling us that the only unvaccinated are dying. But this is a lie. Like so many other lies they have been peddling when it comes to COVID. So what's the point of taking an experimental Jabberdoodle if the death rate of the virus is so low and the Jabberdoodle doesn't necessarily protect you anyway? There is no point. The science and the stats do not support it. The vaccinations, you get what I'm saying, can't even be credited with the decline in infections and deaths this year. The numbers plunged in January. Only 5% of the population was vaccinated by February. The only explanation for this is that the population hit herd immunity many months ago. Remember when government said that they needed 70% of herd immunity or vaccinations to stop the lockdowns and mandates? The goalposts have been moved several times and the government science changes monthly. Now they claim herd immunity doesn't matter and demand 100% vaccinations. We must ask the question again. Why the relentless government push for total vaccination saturation? It's not saving lives and the mandates remain regardless. So why? I can only posit theories based on the evidence at hand, but I think it's clear to most of us that the vaccinations are not about public health nor about saving lives. They are obviously about something else. As numerous virology and vaccination experts have warned over the past year, there's a great risk of harmful health side effects when it comes to experimental technology. Even one of the creators of the vaccinations has suggested that there are dangers in rolling out these gene. I got to be careful, guys. Cocktails without more testing. Of note are concerns about longer-term disorders such as autoimmune disorders and infertility. The mainstream media and the globalists will argue there is no evidence that the vaccinations will cause deadly side effects or infertility. I would argue back that there's no evidence they are safe. Most vaccinations are tested over the course of 10 to 15 years before they are released to the public. For use, the COVID vaccinations are unleashed on the public within months. Honestly, I have no intention of acting as a guinea pig for an untested vacation. But what if the elites know exactly what the side effects will be? And what if the vaccinations are a pivotal part of the Great Reset? The infertility question in particular is drawing the most fire from the establishment. And I would point out a particular insidious narrative being implanted on the media. Whenever people question the chance of sterility caused by the vaccinations, bureaucrats and media talking heads go on the attack and then say there's no evidence that the vacations cause infertility, but COVID-19 might cause it. Just watch this recent speech by Governor of Arkansas where he and his medical flunky were almost run from the podium by an angry audience for peddling the same propaganda. I'd love to play this, but I can't, guys. Well, it says it's on YouTube. So let's go ahead and play it.
The best answer is not me. The best answer is going to a trusted advisor. Usually that is your doctor. Usually it's your healthcare professional. And if you have questions, get those questions answered. And that, to me, is the best solution. Sometimes they have questions, young people do, for example, about, does this impact fertility? Well, the answer is no, and that's been the data, but Dr. Delhay, do you want to answer that? Since I raised the question, go ahead.
So at this point in time...
Why don't you come over here to the microphone, Dr. Delhay?
So at this point in time, there is no evidence that the COVID...
You shut down from telling their stories. This is ridiculous.
All right, so go ahead, Dr. Delhay.
So there is no...
You gave us a walking in the door.
Go ahead, Dr. Delhay.
So there is no medical evidence at this time that the COVID vaccines impact fertility. There is a great deal of evidence that the COVID illness itself causes problems with pregnancy and fetal demise. So I think it's important for people to have factual, accurate information.
Wasn't that great? I just love it. All right, so, and there you have it. The stage is being set, in my view, for a mass infertility event, and COVID will be blamed in place of the experimental vacations. This is why the establishment needs a 100% vacation rate. Unvacation people would stand the evidence of their crime. Let me explain. My concern is that Klaus Schwab's reset agenda is impossible to enforce in a permanent way unless the human population is greatly reduced over a short period of time, a generation or two. Globalists are constantly talking about population control and reduction. Elites like Bill Gates are famous for it. Is it any wonder that they would devise a plan to institute it? What if, as many experts have suggested, the vacation side effects creates this condition of diminishing population? What if they are meant to? We will not know for certain for a couple of years, at least. Autoimmune disorders and infertility can take time to become visible in a population. The average timeline for actual diagnosis of autoimmune disorder is 4.5 years. Infertility can take 6 months to a year to diagnose. If a large population of millions of people remain unvacationed after the next couple of years, then they will represent a sizable and undeniable control group. A control group is a group of subjects that act as a pure sample untouched by a drug or vacation experiment. If the vacationed becomes ill or dies from specific conditions and the control group does not have those same conditions, then that is a pretty good sign that your vacation or drug is poison. The 50% of Americans and smaller percentages in other nations are a control group for the experimental vacations, and if something goes wrong with the Jabberdoodles, then we will be the proof. I suspect this is what the elites are really afraid of. They have to force us to be vacationed as well, all of us, so that there is no control group and thus no proof of what they have done. They could simply blame mass health disorders on itself or some other false culprit. If the vacations are a Trojan horse that causes widespread illness or infertility and the globalists get caught because of a control group exists, then it will mean outright rebellion along with ropes and lampposts for them. Their great reset will fall apart. To be sure, this might happen anyway. Vacation passports are the line in the sand for most people. We are even seeing extensive protests and riots in places like Italy, France, UK, and Australia over the draconian passport scheme. U.S., though, is where the biggest fight will take place. In my opinion, we have an armed population, millions upon millions of trained combat veterans and civilians, a military with around 70% conservatives and independents, and a historical understanding of asymmetric warfare, as we have seen in places like Afghanistan. Tanks, jets, missiles, and drones are no guarantee of victory against a guerrilla force. Vacation passports are not going to happen here. We simply won't allow it. The globalists have set in motion an endgame. It could be an endgame for us, but it also could be an endgame for them. They are on the strict timeline. They must get near 100% vacation rates in the next couple of years or sooner. They must get their vacation passports in place in the next couple of years or sooner. And they must instill permanent lockdown conditions in the near term of stifle growth dissident. We are now in a kind of race in which the globalists must implement their agenda as fast as possible, while we must hold out and hold them back until the truth becomes obvious to the masses. The truth that the lockdowns, mandates, and vacations were never about safety and were always about control. Okay, before I move to the next report, I can tell you guys, I used to work for Blueprint Service. I retired there many years. We used to run Agenda 2020 all the time. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. What's this Agenda 2020? But I was too busy running the prints. So when Agenda 2020 didn't happen, they moved it to Agenda 2030. So what do you think that they're up to? Anyway, this is of a lot of alleged information. It's all alleged. Hello, YouTube. It's alleged information. All right, before we move to the next one. It says, COVID rules are for little people. Obama to hold lavish 60th birthday bash for himself at Martha Vineyard with 200 staff and 475 guests. I can't believe that loser's my age. Barack Obama is holding a lavish 60th birthday bash at Martha's Vineyard, $12 million estate. Interesting how he can afford that now when he was only worth a couple $100,000, until he became the elite's bagman. So, okay, moving on. So far, there are 475 confirmed guests, with Pearl Jam set to play. Steven Spielberg is also set to attend the exclusive gala. This happens as the rest of the country, the little people, are now required to mask up again due to the very contagious Delta variant. Exactly. Rules are for the rubes. Alright, so that's about all there is for that. We can go ahead and read these little excerpts here. It says, former President Obama is hosting a 60th birthday bash for himself on Martha Vineyard, held at the Obama's $12 million home, which sits on 30 oceanfront acres. 475 guests. Pearl Jam was set to play. So it's just basically backing up everything we just read. Alright, moving on to the next report. On Politico, power failure. Cuomo's $106 million bridge light shows fade to black. Oh, dang. Don't you hate it when that happens? Explanations from Cuomo's administration on how the project would be paid for shifted repeatedly, and the endeavor was quietly halted, but the governor wants to bring it back. Yeah, I bet he does. Albany, New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo had plans to bedazzle every state-run bridge in New York City. No matter how rusty and old or new and polished, each was to get its own multicolored flashing light show. The new Kosciuszko Bridge linking Brooklyn and Queens got the treatment, and Mother's Day 2017 unveiling that Cuomo heralded as the first stage of his grand vision, the Harbor of Lights, was to be choreographed together, synced up with other landmarks in the city, and set to their own soundtrack, making for an international tourist attraction and a spectacular light exhibition Cuomo promised at the time. None of that ever happened. Oh, darn, I hate it when the elites don't get their way, don't you? Instead, critics questioned why the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the Cuomo-controlled agency that owns the bridge, would spend money on optics. While complaints about extensive, nearly daily subway delays and shoddy service escalated in 2017 during what became known as the Summer of Hell for public transit riders. Explanations from Cuomo's administration on how the project would be paid for shifted repeatedly, and the endeavor was quietly halted with no signs of movement half a decade after its inception. Now, newly released documents revealed by Politico shows for the first time that taxpayers spent $106 million on the project, including about $37 million for LED lights. Those 4-year-old lights are still sitting in a warehouse with no immediate practical use in mind after the project appeared to be left for dead. It's terrible that we blew $106 million of taxpayer money on a project that never should have gotten off the drawing board, said State Senator Liz Krueger, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee and leading Democratic lawmaker. I'm still happy the project did not go forward. But after Politico asked about the plans and the money that had been spent, Cuomo spokesman Rich Azzopardi said on Friday the endeavor would still happen and cited tourism dollars from bridge lightings in San Francisco as evidence of the potential benefits, as well as attractions in London, Montreal, Paris, and Philadelphia. This project will drive tourism, help to rebuild an incredibly important part of New York's economy that was destroyed by the pandemic, and make New York an even more dynamic place to live and open a business, as the party said in a statement. It said it was no secret that COVID-19 and other infrastructure plans took precedence, but we continue to be excited about the Harbor of Lights project and intend to see it through. Kruger told the government's desire to resurrect the project, said she doesn't believe it's a very good use of public's money and doesn't believe the process was kosher. She worries if the project actually happens, the lights will be disruptive to New York City residents. They didn't remember that stupid idea until you came along, Kruger said in an interview Friday. Exactly. And it is lit up. Cuomo has a penchant for focusing on aesthetics and getting involved in the minute details of New York mega projects he takes up on his own. The 3-term governor has likened himself to a latter-day Robert Moses, boasting of his track record on building big things like the Mario M. Cuomo Bridge over the Hudson River and the Moynihan Train Hall in Manhattan. But as Cuomo faces multiple investigations related to misconduct allegations and other scandals tied to administration, including one that could lead to his impeachment, a growing number of his legacy-boosting infrastructure projects seem to be ending in embarrassment or bigger trouble. Now, hopefully they'll rename that one bridge there. This isn't the first time taxpayers have been on the hook for a problematic project ostensibly intended to boost New York's tourism profile. The state spent millions of dollars installing "I Love New York" tourism signs along highways, only to be informed by federal officials that they were illegal and had to be removed. Cuomo was also reportedly involved in changing the tile color of the MTA tunnels in midstream at a multi-million-dollar cost. And then there's the Mario Cuomo Bridge, Cuomo's inaugural ride across the new span, which replaced the Tappan Zee Bridge and is named for his father, took place with much fanfare, but no acknowledgement of an ongoing investigation into alleged structural issues. For the bridge lighting project, the effects went beyond the cost of the equipment that was never used. The effort took so long to reach a conclusion that a key agency involved in the undertaking, the New York Power Authority, had to carry the project's cost for years, leaving it without the ability to sell long-term public bonds, according to a former official. The agency, known as NYPA, says the bridge project was well within its mandate. This economic development and energy-efficient project is part of a larger transformational plan to reimagine New York bridges and tunnels for the 21st century, and it was put on hold as other projects took priority and the pandemic caused further disruptions. NYPA spokesperson Sue Craig said in a statement on the project, which was put on hold long before the pandemic. We remain committed to working with our partners in the government to invest strategically to modernize our infrastructure, improve transportation, and advance cutting-edge technology and innovation that benefits all New Yorkers and our economy, Craig said. The lack of transparency and approval from the NYPA and MTA boards raises serious concerns, said John Caney, the executive director of watchdog group Renovent Albany. He said the legislature should investigate the secret expenditure and issues should be part of the Assembly's ongoing impeachment investigation. This is something that popped out of the governor's forehead, Caney said. So, do you have a functioning democracy? If you have a governor that can just call up an agency and order them to spend $37 million off budget, that's authoritarian. We're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. And when we say the Pledge of Allegiance, do we say to this democracy for which we stand? No, we said to the republic. All right, moving on. The free spending on a project with no practical purpose stands in sharp contrast to Cuomo's recent grousing over the Gateway program, which includes a plan to rebuild the Hudson River Rail tunnel that he and others have said is a critical necessity for the regional's economy. The project was delayed for years while President DJT was in the White House, but now that it's time to move forward with a friendlier federal government, Cuomo seems to have some qualms on New York's share of the bill for the $13 billion new tunnel. If the federal government wants to do stupid, they can do stupid with their money, Cuomo said recently after years of pressing the 45's administration for action on Gateway. But we're not going to do stupid with our money. No, we're just going to put lights up for no reason. Shifting explanations. The Power Authority, which runs the state's hydropower dams and has a strong cash flow, oversaw Cuomo's bridge lighting project thanks to the energy solution it provides customers. You know what? I wonder who's going to pay the power bill for all those lights. We are! The Power Authority offers energy efficiency services to government entities and supplies powers to, including design, construction, and installation of LED lighting to lower energy bills. The MTA was and is a NYPA customer, getting low-cost electricity and employing the agency as it tries to cut energy usage with more efficient lights. And they want to add millions of more lights. NYPA relies on contractors to get the work done, pays the upfront costs, and then charges its customers a fee and a low interest rate to pay off the capital cost over several years. The usual goal is to have the investments lower monthly energy bills enough to provide a net savings. But the flashy bridge lights wouldn't save any money for the MTA, which already works with NYPA to install more efficient LEDs on its bridges. NYPA has also helped finance other big Cuomo projects with a strong efficiency payback, including some funding for lights and screen displays at the Mahanian Train Hall, a former post office turned into an extension of Penn Station. I suspect when the governor was looking for a project that was never budgeted, he found extra money in the NYPA. It's often been a bank for special projects, Kruger said. Do I think that's how any state funds should be spent? No, I think there should be a more transparent and propitiatory process. The $100 million cost appears to make the Harbor Lights project the most expensive undertaken by the NYPA, according to publicly available data on the completed NYPA efficiency projects. As questions about the lighting project costs and wisdom are raised, the governor's administration offered changing explanations about how the NYPA would be repaid for the Harbor Lights. The governor's first announcement on the light show planned in 2016. The president of MTA Bridges and Tunnels signed off on the $6 million to design the project in December. No subsequent agreements to cover repayment were signed by the MTA officials, and NYPA moved forward under a standing energy efficient master service agreement established early in the 1990s. Boy, it's a long story. At any rate, I think we're going to end it here. If you want to read the whole report, I'll be sure to have the links there for you. And, well, thank you very much for watching. This is Don V with Truth Be Told, and we are broadcasting under partly cloudy skies. Looks like we're going to be in the 70s again today. Woohoo! We'll take that cool weather every day. I hope everybody has a wonderful Monday, and thank you for watching. And we are out of here.